So speaking of, reasonably priced, good sounding products, how did the RPQ come to be, and how did it evolve?
Oh gosh. Well, the RPQ was actually, Wes and I spent a lot of time talking about, when you first contacted me about doing a preamp, it certainly wasn't the RPQ. It was the TRP, and we just wanted a really good sounding, quiet, high gain preamplifier that could be sold at a reasonable rate, and can be manufactured consistently. And so that, working with ribbon mics in a recording studio, it pretty well defines, that particular box is like, that's the distilled essence of what you need, and it's like, yeah, okay, we're going to do this and do this right and make this work really well with the AEA microphones or anybody else's microphones. It wasn't like just working with AEA microphones or just with ribbon microphones. But that's like the moving coil version of a phono cartridge. It's the most demanding thing for the first active stages after the microphone. And it really puts a lot of demand on those first active stages to perform well. So that's where it really started. I think I don't think we went through very many iterations of that very, very first design till we got to a point where we're pretty happy with the way it sounded. I don't even know if there really were. I mean, there's some things about the high pass filter and stuff like that. What do we want to do there, and how do you want to switch it, and what corner frequencies do you want, and slopes and stuff like that. But by and large, it was pretty much defined just because it's the first active stage after a passive ribbon microphone. And you never know when someone's miking a Celtic harp from 20 feet away with a passive ribbon microphone is very different than putting it in front of a Marshall stack. So you have to be able to accommodate that wide range. And the mics that AEA were making, they weren't all exactly the same, and so we had to accommodate those variations as well within the swing of things that the preamplifier could do. And we wanted, Wes wanted to keep it at a price point that was good, and so I think we achieved that, and I think it sounded really good. I used it in some recording projects that I did, along with the 84 and the 88 microphones, and the 44s. And I started to have little, I think after doing a couple of projects, I had a conversation with Wes. I said, well, when I use a ribbon microphone, I always want to grab 10K and boost it 3 dB, and I want to take a 50 hertz shelf and cut it until I get what I want on the low end. It's always what I want, somewhere in there, and I want to have a little flexibility with it, but I almost always start there before I even start listening to what the microphone is doing. And we decided that, well, why don't we just integrate that into a TRP preamplifier so that we have the ability to have those curves, at our fingertips and be able to tailor them, not be rigid with them, but be able to tailor them, to fine tune them both at their corner frequencies and in the amount of boost on the high end or the amount of cut on the low end. And that's how, from my recollection, that's how the RPQ, the first RPQ, came about. We went through a bunch of different iterations with it. Things like having DC coupled inputs, because Wes also wanted phantom power on it. So you have to have blocking capacitors and all the other stuff that happens when you do that. But you could also bypass them by just putting another XLR in and bypassing that part of the circuitry and doing nothing else. But then it didn't really work within the form factor and what AEA wanted on for features and connections and stuff like that. So we went around a couple times on that, but the next thing that happened with that design, and it happened. Obviously the next thing was to build a TRP that had phantom power. So as soon as you do that, you limit the input impedance to a certain value. And it's like, okay, well, we really want a higher input impedance than what we can get with the phantom power. So then we start looking at how do we implement that without creating potential problems for the user when they're switching things in and out, stuff like that. And the later designs of the RPQ did that. You know, they had that kind of stuff, so they were much, much higher input impedances when the phantom power was turned off. And then we rolled that into later generations of the TRP. And things like that. It's just sort of a, you know, we advance this product here and we like the results, and so we advance that product over here, and you sort of keep them going, you know, as time goes by. And you're also really constrained by the availability of the parts that you've been using, you know, because a lot of these parts, a lot of the parts that I demand, which are junction FETs on the front end, you couldn't get them anymore, you know, pretty rapidly. And some of the other manufacturers started producing reasonably good ones and acceptable substitutes, you know, and so we integrated those in, and then we started having problems with those over time, you know, just being the ideal part for what I wanted in that circuit. So more research, you know, what's available now, you know, 20 years later, you know, I have no idea what, you know, Toshiba's doing now. I should look, you know, what are these other companies doing now? I should look, you know, and pay attention to this stuff. And also, oh my goodness, there's all this new stuff. I need to try this stuff. I need to evaluate it. Plus we were going from through hole to surface mount, and they were too. And yeah, so you just sort of, you know, you start, you know, the phrase I like to use was we need to modernize the design so that the company can continue to produce these in the numbers that they've been able to successfully market and sell, you know, and just want to keep going. And ideally, maybe we even improve things sonically at the same time if we're paying attention, close attention. And I think we've achieved that.